Let me posit that MAGA, or the Make America Great Again movement, was born with impotence. Hear me out, not metaphorical impotence, but something closer to what psychoanalysis would call a constitutive lack, an absence masquerading as excess. In fact, we can pinpoint the decade, if not the year, of its birth. Think Reagan, Rambo, and Bundy. It was the Reagan era, and near its end, in early 1987, that gave us Black Monday, when almost a quarter of the stock market evaporated in a single day. I'm sure you remember it well, but if you do not, let me explain. The crash quietly announced what the bombast of Reaganomics could not admit. A get rich, go nuke macho fantasy had cracked. Rambo, a star of that decade, saw his virility go limp as well, and the third Rambo film, 1988, became the last installment of that series for 2 decades. It was as if the franchise sensed the exhaustion of its own fantasy. Meanwhile, the Reagan administration finally conceded that deficits were not some accidental side effect, but the direct result of giveaways to the rich and of unprecedented government spending, what one of my professors back in grad school used to call Keynesian economics on acid. We were told by the press soothingly that this disaster was simply the price of a global economy, as if the worldwide fallout somehow absolved the fantasy that caused it. Then, in 1988, an election year no less, Married with Children aired Impotent, a revealing episode in which Marcy dents her husband Steve's new Mercedes, and in the logic of humor and under the influence of Reagan masculinity, renders the husband impotent. Seeking to repair her husband's dysfunction, Marcy turns not to a doctor or therapist, but to Al Bundy. The scene is priceless, not only for its satire of traditional masculinity, but also for how cleanly it distills what I would call the infant form of MAGA masculinity. Here, impotence is not the loss of power, but its misrecognition. The newly birthed MAGA man is defined by the exchange of testosterone for material status. Manhood is outsourced to the prestige object. Any slight to the object becomes a slight to the self. Any scratch registers as limpness, or worse, castration. The result is a masculinity perpetually demanding recognition, forever offended, and structurally incapable of satisfaction. One might say, and this is the crucial inversion, that it is not power that produces fragility, but fragility that demands the spectacle of power. Superficiality and prestige objectification had already unmanned men in a moment when, as John Updike observed in his novel at the time, Rabbit is rich, with money comes hollowness. And so the Reagan era did not simply produce a new man, it produced a compensatory fantasy of manhood and loud precisely where it was weakest. The creators of Married with Children had their fingers on the pulse, intuiting before the pollsters and pundits that masculinity, once tethered to symbols rather than substance, would experience every dent as an existential threat.